So I'm Satnam Sagoo. I'm going to talk to you, or take your time this afternoon, to talk to you about building a learning brand. And this is more prevalent within our organisation, because when I was at dinner yesterday and people asked me where I worked and I said the British Red Cross, I didn't get any questions after that. People just went, oh wow, that's the British Red Cross, because we recognise this brand. We're, I think, the third most recognised brand in the world. And people know us, and the British Red Cross within that global movement is going to be 150 years old next year. So what does it mean to be building a learning brand? And brand is a word that we use a lot within the British Red Cross. And when I was charged to build a learning brand, there was like, build a brand within our brand, which is always a kind of odd kind of dichotomy. How do I build a brand within a brand? But that's what we were charged to do. And our footprint in the UK is around about 4,000 staff. We have 25,000 volunteers, and when I mean 25,000 volunteers, who volunteer up to 35 hours a week. So it's nice. And then we have an additional 40,000 volunteers who are what we call light touch volunteers. And these volunteers may give us bespoke services, or they may bring a couple of days for us for a year and that kind of thing. Currently we have some consultancy people working on that sort of promotion. So it's a large footprint, and I have the honour of being their Director of Learning, being responsible for the learning of all of those people, from the very light touch all the way to our staff, our CEO. And that's kind of where we are. And it is an honour, and I have been out to most of our services and met all of those fantastic people and been listening to them about what does learning mean to them, what does it mean to be a learner. But before I start, and because people were asking, they don't ask any questions beyond you work for the British Red Cross, which is great for so many people, I wanted to ask of you in the audience, do you know what we do in the UK? Any thoughts?
Training.
Yes, that's great. Anything else? So what I'm going to do is show you a bit about what we do in the British Red Cross, in particular what we've done over 2018. Our brand value is very much about connecting human kindness to human crisis. And this is a small video of what we do across the UK, and it gives you an idea of what our services are like. So.
The NHS saved my physical life. The Red Cross and Ian saved my soul.
She'd gone unconscious, and then because I was doing first aid club at school, I put her in the recovery position.
If you are a documented immigrant and you are complying with reporting, why should they tell you that you can still be detained? So you find that your mental health is so bad, you can just collapse in that public place.
Such an incredible operation that they've got. It really helps thousands of people. There's 3,000 litres coming through here every day.
Day 5 on our expedition to climb Mount Everest.
Thank you!
So that's what we do, and and I don't know if the gentleman from media is here, I thought it was a great segue to when he left, if you were here before lunch, about where he left, because the Red Cross, we send people in to help those people who've come out of hospital, and we work with them, and we do a lot around banks as well, and how do we support them get that information. And we didn't set this up, which was great, you know. So you now know that the person is supported because the Red Cross is there. Our brand principles are very simple. We put the person at crisis at the heart of everything. Our values are about compassion, dynamic, courageous, inclusive, and that's who we are, and that's our brand, and that's what we do. We serve from everywhere within the UK, our domestic home, and we work internationally. So when you're asked to think about a learning brand and you buy into this and we put the person at the centre, it's very hard to see this come up when you survey your own people. And you survey, and this is across the board, and this was a result that before I joined. And these are the three themes that came off our people, that they felt disconnected, they felt overwhelmed, and they didn't feel they were in a space that they could collaborate in. So of course, what happens, as all of us in this room know, we're learning and development professionals. So what was going to solve this was training, because we all know that's going to solve this. We were going to give them the magic pill, and it was going to be training, and suddenly they will not feel disconnected. And in fact, there was an idea of having a training about connections, you know, because this is how we're going to resolve it. And, you know, with horror, we've all done it. And you're going, oh, I can't believe this is what they're going to be asking us to do. But we wanted to buy some evidence around into this, and we wanted to understand what the root cause was. And why was this feeling in the organisation? We had gone through a huge transformational change. The third sector is going through a big change at the moment with the funding crisis and various other things, and people in our space as well. And what does that mean for us? And what does it? And no one course is going to do that. So we wanted to bring people together. We chose not to do a survey. We chose to have a roadshow of us going out and asking our people, who spend day and out working with people in crisis, about what they felt and what the root cause was. And we deliberately chose not to do a survey because part of us was to feel connected. So what came back was they felt so connected to our movement, so connected to the power of connecting kindness to human crisis. However, they were disgruntled with the organisation. They were feeling put upon, and much of what we talked about today from the first conversation we had this morning about well-being was very evident in that. Staff were saying, and this is something that you all hear in charities, that if you're a member of staff, not only do you work, you should donate and you should volunteer. When will you go home is our question to that. And so we've created this culture of constantly giving, and that leaves very little space. And what we wanted to do within that was understand where we were and understand where our people were, and build them a learning culture or a learning brand that was theirs to own. We felt that both groups, our volunteers and our staff, felt they were lesser of the other. Our volunteers said that we were a volunteer-led organisation, but the staff made all the decisions. Our staff were saying the volunteers lead us and we don't make any decisions. And we have really gone out strategically not to call them either those camps. They are our people, and this is a journey of taking us that brand about connecting that human kindness, showing it kindness within and connecting it to the person in crisis, because actually, if I go back, all of these people are in crisis, and that's the crisis that they're feeling. And we were the organisation that preached about people in crisis, but yet suddenly all our own organisation was there. So once we kind of understood that, we worked with them and we started backwards. So I asked them to create a vision that was based on our strive. And what came out was that they wanted to be an empowered people to connect human kindness with human crisis. And for us on a business practicality side, we needed to have a system that was both equitable and sustainable. And this is our vision even now, and it will continue to be our vision because there's only so much you can do in a short few months. And we wanted to be the vision that was looking at developing our people to meet those in crisis. So we did the classic things, and we asked, this is all done through workshops with our people, both staff and volunteers who've continually competent. And these are what they came up with. They wanted to have something that was in partnership, was ambitious, was again data-driven, onwards and efficient. Because we know that we need to be more efficient. We need to be accountable for our donors and the money that they bring us. Again, we are very into red and white, as you can probably see. But it was about individual need, our organisational success, and how we pillar it on. And this was our proposal to build the learning organisation, very much leading in that space. Our aims are very simple, and I'm sure many of you have these words in your aims and your strategies across the learning field. It was very much about building capacity and capability. It was very much about meeting our statutory requirements, and in particular in the last year, our sector has come under a huge amount of requirements for regulatory requirements, and meeting those needs and meeting the needs of our donors. So what did we do? We've had these stakeholder events, we went to large things, but we collectively brought together a network. And through the influence of that network, through every board now that we have, through every steering group that we run, we have a collection of volunteers on that ground. We have people there at every point who are not only the users of this, but are actually experiencing in the front line. So this was our kind of most biggest thing that we've done, and it's about 200 people strong at the moment. This is being delivered through about 80 people in the L&D footprint within that. And we also have around 100 L&D tutors, volunteer tutors. And this brings them together. It gives them something to connect to, it works them, but it also means they influence the business. We put together a programme which was based on the conversation, and I always call it the poor manager conversation. Every conversation we've had today has the manager at the heart of it, that we need to train the manager, and that poor manager is just one of us. And you know, that poor manager has been asked to do so many things, and we've all been there when you've got 3 o'clock in the morning, you're still doing the data that you need to put in an Excel spreadsheet that you did about 5 times over. So I always say the poor managers programme. But we wanted to talk about how does this look for us as people. And this is a programme that's on for everybody. It's not for our staff, it's for staff and volunteers. But it's equitable and sustainable, and that's what the key word is. And for us, it's about being equitable. And we wanted to connect the key things that we wanted. We wanted the person to be able to do team development, coaching and mentoring, what was offered on the leadership, but also from a grassroots perspective. And we wanted it to be a blended learning approach, because learning, we wanted each person to be a learner. And some of it is through self-learning, some of it is bringing through systems that we've put in place. One of my favourites is management on the run, and this is when you turn up to a day and you pick a topic, and you pick 3 topics, and our trainer will deliver you those 3 topics, whether they are joined up or not joined up. You go with it, and if you don't like what's been picked, you can leave. And it's been really landing well. People are really enjoying it. They're enjoying how we do this. But it's open to everybody, and that was the key. It was for our people, and it's around developing our people. We've created tools that you can access quite easily. And this is very much about a team development tool. It's really easy to access. It gets you started. It can do your 360 through it. You can run this with your own team. You can do it, and it gives you a nice little report at the end of it, which tells you about where your team's strengths are. And this again is open. All you need to actually access it is a British Red Cross email address. And off people are going. And people are using that. Our last stats, we had 50 people accessing it every week, which is quite high in an organisation as broad as this. We also then had a learning management system. We've gone with Fuse, and we're calling it Fuse. British Red Cross tends to just keep the title of what the company's called. So this is our service. And recently the topic of the month was around appraisal, because we're still doing appraisal. But it was actually, the metrics show that more volunteers took that training than our staff, and that's because they actually want more development. No longer does a person, you know, when we talk about adding value, if you are volunteering, they don't want the standard training, they want more and they want development. And so why would we ignore them? Why would we not talk about developing our people? Our management offer is to both, our leadership offer is to all. So how's it felt for me personally coming in about a year ago? It has often felt like this, but this is because we wanted it to this way. It has been building the plane while flying it, and it's been a journey of all sorts. There's been blood, sweat and tears, I think, is all the way through, but of amazing stories about what we do and about where we are taking the journey. But what has happened though, throughout that and throughout that collaborative working, is that we do have a brand, a learning brand, and that brand is called Developing Our People. And people recognise it now and they feel part of that journey. We have just started, so it's nowhere that we have established it, but we have just started it. And that has been identifying that people are people and they may want to learn in different ways. We scrapped away some of those classic equations. In particular, we got rid of 70-20-10 in the organisation. And the reason I say this is because we went so literal. I had one of the conversations I had at the very beginning where someone said, I give all my people 1 week to learn, and can you tell me how the 70-20-10 equation would be in that? And we were like shocked. You know, you kind of go, someone designed this equation to help you, but it had become a literal equation. And all our PR and learning went out with this equation. And everybody just felt that means I've got no face-to-face training. I'm no longer going to be able to sit in a classroom and learn, but that's the way I learn. So we had to go back and ask our people what they didn't like. So we took away some of those messaging. We introduced words that they already knew, blended, social learning. We put those words back because actually equations for some sectors don't work, and we have to be mindful of that. But this learning strategy, more around developing our people, has been something that's owned, and it is their brand, and that's the vision that the Red Cross has for the future. Again, we quite like the black and white, the red and white sort of thing. So our next steps is to continue growing that work, continue in partnership. Things that aren't working well, we'll have to take that on. And sometimes they're things that I've done, you know, it's a really love of mine, but they don't like it, and I feel very upset. When I invent a little masterclass and they go, it's not landing well. There's nothing that you want to hear less, isn't it, from your own people, that this is not the masterclass that should have been invented. So I go and cry and then I come back. But our journey, our brand is really about collaboration. We do it. The Red Cross is in an arena of humanity, and we say we have it in 3 ways. We are the lead, we are the collaborate, or we advocate for it. So why would we change that culture and not apply it to learning? So our culture of learning is very much about what are we leading on that we need to deliver? What can we collaborate with other partners, and what can we advocate? And our advocacy at the moment is around having a cross-representation of all our people across all our themes. So that's where I'm going to leave it. Part of it is that we're also part of a global network. We are in 191 countries across the globe, and the collaboration is getting bigger. This year we are going to run a first global learning network for the Red Cross as a whole, as a movement, and the British Red Cross has the honour of hosting that, which is, you know, quite a long way since we've come. So yes, so that's where we are, and I'll leave you with one last fact, which is that across the globe we have 14 million volunteers, and this is something that we try to connect, and it's always about connecting that kindness, or that one act of kindness, to that person in crisis. So I'm open to questions. All stunned silence.
How good is Fuse? You mentioned Fuse. How's it working for you? Is it landing well?
So as a learning platform, we're running 2 at the moment. We have a platform that we're given through the Federation, which is our governing body, and that is Cornerstone that we use, and our people are used to that. So Fuse was procured at a time when we had no trainers left, and we bought a system that we thought would almost replace the trainers. And it's been an interesting journey for us, because actually a lot of the packages that are available in this space are very much targeted to people who work with staff. But we're getting there. So it's been learning on both sides for us. The user testing, so we've had 3,000 people testing it at the moment, and we've had a different 50-50 share of that. When the lady from Inverness who rang me up and said she loved it, it was brilliant. And that was a real key moment for us, because she was able to access it. And one of the things it did was it took away we could take away a half of a day's training face-to-face, replaced with a 2-minute video, which was relative and important to them. So on some things it's landed well, on other things we have huge issues with accessibility. Our demographic is 15 to 80, with our youngest volunteer being 13, and our oldest volunteer currently is 100. So, you know, giving them tech, you know, isn't... But when we look to that word collaboration, and I go back to that, because a really interesting thing happened in... It's a hub that we've got just outside of Nottingham, and people had to go and do their kind of mandatory training through that. And one of our volunteers just said, right, you know, none of them got tech, I'm going to do it at home, I'm going to show them all through. And so some of it we're using innovations like that, when people go, right, you can come to a shop maybe and you can watch it there, and those sort of things. So to answer your question in a long way, is that it has worked in certain areas, and the user testing, early testing, has been good. We haven't gone live all the way. We are only at the moment live to all staff and plus this user group, so early days. Yeah.
Obviously being the same sort of industry.
Yeah.
With the volunteers, do they have total access to it?
Yes. Yes. So
it doesn't need a sign on or anything like that?
It does. That's its own predicament. So we have a lot of NHS contracts, and they need sign-off dual authentication. I won't say much more than that, but often it's a word that you go bang your head over there, because it doesn't work, you know, and people go, I forget my sign-in, and most of our queries are around about sign-on. And actually we've had to go back, and I don't think there's any shame in saying that some of your learning brand is around about maturing the baseline, because actually it is about maturing that baseline. It's getting people to a level that they can access these things. And some of the training we've put in is so simple. So one of the services we do is mobility aids. You know, we give out people wheelchairs and so forth. And it's volunteer led. And occasionally someone will come and want to do a card payment. And it's as simple as that. They want to do a card payment. And the person who's manning it, they just fall apart. They literally fall apart about how to do this. So the first thing that we raised on Fuse, our digital, was how to do a card payment. And that is the biggest hit piece of media. You know, I'd love to say it was this glamorous leadership topic, or it was this wonderful, but it's the one because they can click on it and go, right, I need to do this and I can take your card payment. And really, ultimately, if that's the only learning they want to do, then that's great. And it is led by our learners. But yeah, you know, you do kind of go, so the one that I wanted, has that been hit at all? And they go, no, not landing very well, but you know, the card payment one is, so yeah. So on that, things Fuse has been actually brilliant for us. Yeah.
In terms of the kind of management on the run, what kind of topics are you doing, and how are you making that decision?
So we've got part of our developing our people programme. We asked what were key relevant project topics that you wanted to talk about, and we've got a list. Some of them are leadership things like succession planning, you know, emotional intelligence, wellness, you know, we've got a suite of them. And our trainers, we've got about 10 trainers who are trained in those areas. And that's what they offer. So you turn up on the day, we use a little voting tool and you vote it, so it looks very democratic. And you run with what happens on the day. And because you walk in and someone gives you a little tool, that's the first thing they like. You get to vote, great. And it's like, I picked my learning today, even though it's within a confine of a small framework. but it's landed really well. People are really enjoying it. And we're also running in, I'm an ex-epidemiologist, so I was in public health for a very long time. And so we're running things like problem-based learning as well. And we are trying to do injects, so every 6 weeks someone gets a little story, an add-on. And we have phenomenal stories in the organisation. We are, after all, the Red Cross, so we have all these amazing stories about how you help people. And we're using those as our injects about what happens next, you know. And so those are again things that are working or landing well. And actually none of them have really involved tech, sorry. They've just involved, I would like to see this, and this is how I would like to learn. And we've been listening to that. So that's kind of where we've got to. But yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about management on the road. Yeah. I should have bought some buckets. I was going to say put the money, pound in the bucket. But
I've got a question, Satnam.
Yeah.
So I know it's early days.
Yeah.
But is your gut feeling that this approach is healing that them and us breach between the staff and the volunteers?
Yes. That is, I would say, the sort of litmus test so far has been that it's doing that. But also bringing everybody into that space, you know, not trying your very best not to have, we don't refer to it workforce anymore, we call it people force. Because actually if you tell a volunteer that they're part of your workforce, it doesn't land well. So our initial thing is around our own engagement, how do we talk, how do we capture that, and that's kind of where we are. So I think it's working. It is very early days at the moment. There is always going to be people who are not happy with the journey that you've taken. Including, so my recent gripe was we've got no loo rolls and the lock is broken and a few other things before they even got to the training bit. But you're there, that's what you're there to do, to listen to that. They didn't have any loo rolls. I'm not sure what we could do about that, but I said I'd give them the contact of facilities and it worked. But, you know, I think part of it is when you're in that space and you're talking about helping people in crisis, the fundamental skill that you need is listening. And we need to listen to our people, and that's what this has all been about.